Hi, good afternoon. My name is Daniel Irwin and I am an ITL 694. And today I am presenting my action research proposal project. And the title of the presentation is Play or Pressure, the Role of Team Competition in Elementary PE. So to get started, the nature of the study, my initial research question was, how does participating in competitive team activities in physical education classes affect kindergarten students' physical, social, and emotional engagement? So the purpose of the study came from my realization of the importance of that competition plays and the way it can affect positively and negatively to younger students as working in a elementary school in physical education. So my thought process was to initially determine, does competition always equal higher engagement? The next purpose of the study that I wanted to research was, at what age are students ready to actually compete against their peers? The third item would be teaching competition, what it is. So when are students actually learning what competition is and how they can learn the different qualities about competition and its effects. The fourth thing is developing SEL skills early to help them deal with in competitive situations. They have the correct social and emotional learning skills developed to be able to get themselves through those items. And then also the lifelong learning goals of competing. So as you can see here, I have a graph. It does show that engagement typically is at its highest in the elementary school years and drops from there. That's why I think it's very important early and often, as early as kindergarten or first grade, to ensure students are familiar with what competition is in total before competing against their peers. Nature of the study, so the significance of the study is understanding competition's effects on engagement. Also, it would be building curriculum, having teachers take that information and build curriculum that matches students' needs. Offering appropriate activities, so not throwing students into activities that are maybe too advanced for them, but understanding what their skill levels are, and improving the quality of students' lives. So beyond the classroom, whether they're at home, if they're comfortable doing physical activities in the classroom, they can take those and use those skills outside of the classroom to live a healthier life. So starting off, literature review. The first item that I was interested in finding out was actually understanding what competition is. So it would be students understanding what to learn about competition, how to control their emotions. So researchers Tasaki and Delgadas in the article, The Competition in Preschool Age, note that students typically think about competition as solely winning and losing. So when you have that idea, they don't understand the emotional aspects, how they're going to feel when they're pushed by their peers, or there's verbal communication between the peers that's negative. They don't understand those skills. They just understand the idea that competition revolves around winning or losing. When that happens, some are drawn to the experiences, maybe those people with high skill development, and others may be disengaged, anxious, or discouraged from competing in those activities. So from that article and that information, I found it's very important early on in students before they compete to teach them what competition is before actually performing in the activity. All right, the next piece of literature that I reviewed was creating individualized goals. So after understanding what competition is, how to control themselves, it's important for educators to set attainable and achievable goals for each student. What that's going to do is increase motivation, increase engagement, and gives them something realistic to achieve for. So a study, it was titled A Model for Effective Learning in Competition. The researchers, what they did was they divided students up. They took 60 students all around the same age, and 30 of them were given goals before competing in the competitive activities, and the other 30 were not. They then observed and surveyed the students after to gauge their engagement. And the assessment showed higher performance, higher skill level built when students have goals in mind that they can achieve for. The last literature review that spurred me along the way was competition's lasting effects. So once students understand what competition is, they've received goals to achieve, now they need to understand the lasting effects that competition can have in their life. It's going to be throughout their life, whether it's trying to get a good score on a high school test, or it's going to be getting a job out of high school. All throughout their life, they're going to be dealing with competition. So it's important that they understand it, and then ways to increase their engagement would be giving them goals and explaining the lasting effects of competition. So when the students are able to connect their competition and their feelings towards it to real life, they can have higher engagement opportunities. So if you're able to offer them activities that align with their interests, if somebody's into basketball and you get them in a competitive activity in basketball, they're gonna have higher engagement. Also, it's going to teach lifelong skill development. So beyond the classroom, students are hopefully going to be able to take what they've learned in the class and push that off to living a healthier lifestyle, making good choices. And activity as an adult. So what you're learning as an elementary school student, if you are having good experiences with competition and physical activity in classes, you're going to have a positive outlook on activity, and hopefully that in turn means you're going to be living a healthier lifestyle and be more active as an adult. So the methodology I would use in my action research, should I do it? Initially, the participants in the design. So participants, it would be 2 kindergarten classes from Twin Lakes Elementary in Fair Oaks, California. I would list one of those classes as a control group and one as an experimental group. The experimental group would be receiving a lesson plan prior to actually competing in physical activities. So the first 30 minutes of each physical education class would be them learning about competition, whereas the control group would just be thrown right into the competitive activities. I would also be using a PE teacher and conducting this during normal classroom time, so Monday through Friday, 8 to 3. The design, I would be a qualitative design, and I'd be using surveys and observations. A little bit about the study procedures. So surveys, each student would be given a pre, a during. So the during surveys would be every Friday after spending a week of doing the competitive activities, and a post survey after all the experiments are done. The control group, again, what I said, would have no lesson plan. They would just be thrown into the activity. The experimental group would be given a lecture by a teacher about the importance of competitions, its lasting effects, and everything before that. We would then have a facilitated, both groups have a facilitated competitive activity, and I would sit there as an observer to take field notes of anything that I see the students using, whether that's SEL skills, how long they were engaged. The data collection process. So once I have all my information, I'm going to take the surveys, pre, during, and post, my observation and field notes, and I'm going to analyze them. So what I'm looking at is the differences between the control and experimental group is the primary thing. So what I'm looking for is when engagement was at its highest, when it was at its lowest, when it was at its lowest, what SEL skills were used by the students, and when it was at its lowest and highest, how long did they stay engaged in the activity? So I'm going to be cross-referencing all those field notes with these surveys to see if having those lectures about, and when you're learning about what competition is, offered higher chances for engagement and a better outcome for the activity. So the reflection, my expected outcomes off of my research, what I suggest I anticipate I will see is higher engagement for those students that have an understanding of what competition is, how to get set realistic goals, and ones that understand how competitions can be used throughout their lives. So those students in the experimental group, I anticipate will have a greater time with the facilitated instruction. I also believe that those students will have a value of an active life. They'll understand the importance of having a value of an active life by having those lessons plans. And for future use, so My thought with this is that it is important before any students are thrown into a competitive experience, they are taught what competition is, not just winning and losing, but the ways it can be used as good, ways it can be bad, and ways to deal with it using SEL skills when those come up. Each student's gonna be handling these situations differently, so giving them an understanding and having them use the skills that they can develop before actively participating is very important. So my advice to other researchers while doing this project was stay curious. Don't jump to conclusions. When I started this project, I was very certain that competition was very important. It's been something that's been very important to me in my life. I still think it's very important. What I didn't anticipate was me understanding the ways in which competition can be used negatively. I wasn't really looking into that. So by understanding the role that learning competition, the role that setting goals, and the role that having an active lifestyle all play in competition is something that I found very interesting. Do your research. So one of my favorite parts of this project was doing the annotated bibliography, going over all those articles, hearing all these different perspectives. Some aligned with what I was interested in, some did not, but getting a wider grasp of all the research that's out there. Collaborate, work with your peers. There in these courses, I've spoken to other PE teachers, I've spoken to other teachers that are working on their action research proposal, and it was all very helpful and insightful. Manage your time. So these projects can take a long time and you can get burnt out very easily. So make sure you've managed your time, you're not spending too much time on one specific area, and that you have a good goal in mind. A couple of the references that I used, Castle and Howells, that would be a model for effective learning and competition. Tilga, that was going to be long-term impact of PE interventions. And Tasaka and Degavius, the competition in preschool age. So all of these resources were really specific to competition in younger age students. So it gave different highlights as to the importance of understanding the definition of competition, of setting realistic expectations and goals for each student, and understanding the ways in which competition will be used throughout our lives. I appreciate you listening to my project. I hope you have a great day.